from Dear Portugang to the Bime. This is how and why I chose Portugal. Let's check it out.
A's good, A's good, A's good, A's good. Wicked. It's Portuguese good.
Before we get started, I noticed that many of you who enjoy my content haven't gotten around to subscribing yet. It costs you nothing to subscribe, but it really helps me out. So go ahead and smash that subscribe button. Go on, smash it. And if you don't,
that's ignorant.
Alright, let's get into it. So unlike many, I had never set foot inside Portugal before I packed up my family and moved here. So how the hell have I ended up here in the wilds of central Portugal? Stay with me until the end. I'm saving something very controversial for the end of the video, and I really want your feedback on it. I've touched on this in a previous video, so I won't spend too much time on this part. I lived in Hong Kong from 2010 to 2020, and we owned and ran a small language school there. And I also taught English in several schools there. On the whole, Hong Kong was pretty good to us, but like anywhere, it had its pros and cons. Anyway, me and another teacher pal, Mr. Paul, who was featured in a couple of my videos and now lives in Nazaré, Portugal, a couple of hours down the road, well, as the prospect of Brexit loomed, the idea of leaving Hong Kong and heading to an EU country became a regular topic of discussion. 2019 rolled around and the Brexit deadline had been set for 31st of December 2020. The civil unrest in Hong Kong was reaching a crescendo. Schools and businesses were closed and our income had been severely slashed. Hopes of an economic rebound were dashed after Christmas with the appearance of COVID in early 2020. Schools didn't open and our language centre was forced to remain closed. We faced the reality of draining our cash reserves by the summer, so we had a family meeting and decided to leave Hong Kong for good. We sold what we could and gave away the rest and caught one of the last flights out of Hong Kong on 6th of April 2000, just days before flights were grounded globally, landing in a surreally locked down London where we stayed for a couple of weeks before heading to familiar stomping ground, for me anyway, in the northeast of England to ride out lockdown. Now, me and my wife, before living in Hong Kong, had lived in Sweden and Denmark, and we often spoke in Hong Kong about how much we miss Scandinavia. In fact, our oldest son Christian was born in Denmark. The world-class education system, the way of life and the demand for English teachers, as well as a 5-year path to the Finnish passport, had led us to choose Finland for our EU destination. As I've mentioned in previous videos, broadly speaking, I don't have a lot to say about Brexit, but losing my freedom of movement was devastating to me. Also, I wanted that freedom for my sons. So why aren't we living in sunny Finland? Well, we sat in the UK through lockdown and many European countries kept their national borders closed until late 2020. In June of 2020, France and Spain opened their borders to EU nationals and we decided to head to Spain and wait in the sunshine until the Finnish border opened. A problem we had was that my Hong Kong wife's Schengen visa would run out in October and the ever-present spectre of the looming December Brexit deadline hung over us like a dark cloud. The Finnish border showed no signs of opening. We had to come up with another plan. We had to choose another EU country to live in. By the way, at the risk of offending the Spanish, it's not a place I would choose to live in, and there are many reasons for that. Okay for a break, not as a place to live. And to be honest, I believe that most Spanish would prefer it that way too. So began the search for a suitable country. I've always resorted to pros and cons lists when making tough decisions. Thanks, Mum. And choosing our EU destination was no different. I came up with a list of criteria and gave each EU country a rating. So here is my criteria list in no particular order. I have 2 boys at school and I can't afford to have 2 kids at international school, so this was a priority. Further, I firmly believe that not putting your kids into the local system is almost a sin. Why wouldn't you allow them the opportunity to immerse in and learn the language and the culture? So Finland often tops the world here, and that was one of the main reasons for us choosing Finland. So where does Portugal rank? Well, it was ranked at 24th in the world when we were doing our research. After a decade in Hong Kong, I must admit that academics were not necessarily the most important metric for us. We joined several Facebook forums and people seemed happy overall with the Portuguese education system. We also knew that our boys would be given extra language support, and universities are good and free or very affordable. We had awarded Portugal a 3 out of 5 for education before we came, but I would now award it a 4 out of 5. It loses a point for too many strikes and too long school days. On the other hand, our sons are thriving and the teachers are very loving and very caring. We really enjoy the emphasis on arts and humanities, and yeah, really pleasantly surprised. Which leads me on nicely to language. How useful is the language? We speak Cantonese as a family, not so useful outside of Hong Kong, maybe Vancouver and Toronto, but that's Canada. We wanted a EU. Plenty of lists online ranking languages, but of the European languages, the ones that are considered most valuable are English, Spanish, French, German and Portuguese. Portuguese is quite a useful language, although I would argue that Spanish and or French have the edge. That said, learn one of the big 4 Romance languages and it's easy to pick up the rest. My oldest son speaks fluent Portuguese and can get by in French and Spanish, so it was a great choice in that department. I'd originally given Portuguese a 4 out of 5, and I'll probably leave it there because I find it more difficult than French or Spanish. A thing that happened in Spain is that we found ourselves quite enjoying walking to the beach on an almost daily basis. Now I know some of you are thinking, Finland? Isn't that super cold? But the thing is, Scandinavian summers are awesome. Also, and I don't know how to explain it, it's really damp and miserable the way the UK is. In fact, I mostly dismissed Ireland, most of France, Germany, Austria, Poland, based on the simple fact that the weather is too much like England's. As far as climate, we ended up with Mediterranean countries, Croatia, Cyprus, Greece. Well, they all rank low for language, and I think Cyprus has a compulsory military draft. No thanks. Malta, Italy, Monaco, France and Portugal. All of these ranked well for us for climate. Beach lifestyle, 4 out of 5. Oh, and a side note, we ended up discovering river beaches which we actually enjoy more than the seaside, and this helped us with our move to central Portugal. We are quite a frugal family and we don't eat out often. To be honest, we don't think there is a lot in it between EU countries when it comes to groceries, say. And then other things can get tricky. Energy is super affordable in Portugal, but cars are super expensive. Look, the big purchase is the house. I knew I wanted to buy outright or with a small mortgage, and Portugal ranked highly here. I know people will say, oh, isn't Portugal facing a housing price crisis? Here's the thing. A, we came from Hong Kong. 500,000 euros will maybe get you a 500 square foot apartment on the outskirts of the city, if you're lucky. B, I'm not interested in living in expat ghettos, so the prices in the Algarve and Lisbon or Porto simply don't affect me, any more than the house prices in England's Brighton, London or Manchester affected me when I lived there. For me, I find housing in Portugal very affordable. 4 out of 5. Again, I had to think about my sons here too. Look, Portugal got a 2 out of 5 here. Sadly, employment prospects are not great here and salaries are some of the lowest in Europe. Those of us who have savings, overseas passive incomes, pensions or remote work can make it work. On the other hand, it's possible for entrepreneurial types to make things happen here. Anyway, I gave Portugal a 2 out of 5 here, and that hasn't changed now I'm here. If anything, now that I've witnessed the bureaucracy firsthand, I'd probably guess that starting a business here could also be unnecessarily difficult. Portugal was ranked 7th in the world for safety in 2023 and is regularly in the top 10. Crime happens, but it's pretty rare, especially in rural areas. As far as personal safety goes, it seems safe to be out alone after dark, certainly outside of the cities. We see much less vandalism and graffiti than we did in Spain, and certainly a lot less street drunkenness. Anyway, we probably gave Portugal a 4 out of 5 for safety before we came, and I'd leave it there, with the benefit of hindsight, while adding that I doubt any country could achieve a 5 out of 5. By culture, I mean everything from historic sites to festivals and music. I doubt one could visit all of Portugal's castles in one lifetime, and Portugal also has a wealth of archaeologically significant sites from Roman and even Neolithic periods. Cultural festivals fill the Portuguese calendar, and every town features at least one interesting museum and several stunning churches. For such a geographically small country, Portugal is incredibly diverse when it comes to regional food differences, as well as building styles, with the distinct whitewashed homes with their Moorish-inspired chimneys in the Algarve to the schist villages in the mountains of central Portugal. We gave Portugal a 3 out of 5, and I've probably increased that to 4 out of 5. You could seriously spend a lifetime exploring just Portugal. For us, the Italian Riviera was the winner here and ended up being a close second to Portugal. Anywhere within an hour of Genoa was on our radar. We felt that the area was really at the heart of Europe, and we love Italian food and culture. For us, the Italian Riviera was the 5 out of 5 when it came to location. Sadly, Portugal ranks 1 out of 5 on this. As far as mainland Europe goes, it's right at the bottom corner. Obviously, this wasn't a deal breaker. We're here. But I do find it a little frustrating at times, if I'm being honest. Alright, this is the one that I know will be the most controversial, but it's a simple fact. Portugal is one of only 3 EU countries that have a 5-year route to an EU passport, the others being Ireland and Finland. Finland was off the list due to COVID. Ireland was off the list due to cost of living, no useful second language, safety and climate. Portugal got a 5 out of 5 here. Now that we are here, we've discovered that realistically it's 6.5 years to get the passport. But even then, the next shortest wait, Sweden, is 7 years. So it's still quicker here. And I know this grinds the gears of many Portuguese people, but the reality is that all of life is pros and cons and compromise. I'm simply being honest. If Portugal had a 10-year path to citizenship, I'm quite sure I wouldn't have moved here. That's just the truth of it. So Portugal is not a country I'd ever even considered, but once I did the research, it kept coming up, and it kept ranking higher than the other countries according to my criteria. We had the family meeting and made the decision. 3.5 years later, we're still here and still loving it. Would I recommend Portugal as a country you should move to? Look, I think you have to do what I did. Make a list of wants. What's important to you and your family? Come up with a short list of countries and then award each a score based on all of your needs and wants. Remember, it's got to be next to impossible to find a country that ticks all the boxes. For us, Portugal comes pretty damn close. Let me know in the comments if you're thinking of moving to Portugal and why. Or if you're already here, did it meet your expectations? Alright, I think I'm going to wrap the video up here. If you like this type of content and you're new around here, please consider subscribing. It really helps me out. And if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. Muito obrigado, amigos. Ciao.